So, like I said in like I mentioned, today would hopefully be quite brief, but we would look into still on Power Query. We'll look into two aspects of it. We'll look into what we call two functions, um, pivot and unpivot. You know how we do our pivot tables and create files. We're going to see how to pivot and unpivot using Power Query. So I had mentioned when you get a file and a spreadsheet, an Excel file, it's very important to know the type of file you you have. Always check it out, right? If you go to file, if you go to save as, you'll see this is a CSV file. And if you're going to carry out analysis in a CSV file, ensure that you save it as a workbook, else whatever you do would be lost. Let me give a quick example. It's in CSV file now, right? I'll just okay. I'll just insert a pivot table here and maybe add year and quantity, and let's say I save this. This is a pivot table, right? If I close this file, saved, and I close, it actually wants to save changes to the file. You click on save, so it gives you an option, and you could choose. Here you see CSV, you want to change it to a workbook and save. Alternatively, you can go to file, save as, change it here to Excel workbook and save, so that you have your document intact. Let's see what happens if I don't save it that way. I open the CSV file again and see the pivot table is gone, just the values are left, because that's the nature of CSV files. So it's important to take note of this. Always ensure that if you're doing analysis inside the CSV file, you save it as an Excel file before you get working with it. Okay, I'll just recover the file now and do this. So here we are. Today I would want us to be working inside this file. So I'm going to first of all save it as an Excel file. Save as an Excel workbook. Save. And there we go. Now let's see how we can analyze this. If you go to data and get data, so there are different ways to under get and transform data. I had mentioned there are different ways you can import data. There are different ways you can import data. You can import data from multiple sources, like I had mentioned, from an Excel workbook, a CSV file, an XML file, and the rest of them, from different databases, SQL database, Oracle database, and all, provided you have the API or the key that connects them together, as the case may be. Once you have access, simply put, you can import these data sets, right? Um, you can also import from your website. You can import from a picture, yeah, even though it comes hazy and all and everything. So let's say you want to work on a data set in an Excel sheet, just like we have this one now. We want to work on this data set inside this Excel sheet. You can select the data set anywhere in the data set and go to your data under get data and transform data. Get and transform data. You see this from table / range. If you click on it, the first thing it does is that it highlights wherever your cursor, the table your cursor is selected in. Then you see my table has a header. You check the box, and then we click on OK. It transforms it to a table and opens the Power Query interface, the Power Query editor. You remember this from our last class, right? The Power Query editor. Data transformation is one of the key, in fact, the key things you do with Power Query. Transform data, clean data, basically structuring data how you'd want it to be, right? And we had gone through each of the tabs, looking trying to get things done. There's just so much that can be done with Power Query that we may not exhaust all of them right now. But in use cases, when it is applicable, we would. Where applicable, but we'll do we'll see what we can do, and we'll just look at some of the features. So today I want us to look at an aspect called pivoting and unpivoting data, or pivoting and unpivoting data. Okay, so picture typically this is a conventional data set. By now you should be used to this kind of data set, where you have the industry type. Okay, so this data, first of all, remember the first thing you want to do when you see a data set is to understand the data set, right? So from the header, it is a CO2 emission data. CO2 is carbon dioxide or carbon monoxide. I don't know, CO is carbon monoxide, so that's single, and then CO2 is carbon dioxide. That's 2 molecules of oxygen dioxide. Yeah. Okay. So in a bid to, so I'm just trying to put context to this data. Like I said, it's very important to understand your data set. In a bid to manage the effects, the adverse effects of global warming in the world, there are regulations where companies and everyone is tasked with cutting down on carbon deposits, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, basically the deposits from these. How is that bid? So there are regulations. Companies have limits to which they can. There are regulations as to the as to what amount of carbon waste or carbon products one should emit, right? So there is actually a field analytics, an aspect of analytics, that there are companies that specialize in carbon analytics. Yes, so they go to companies regulate their carbon waste from the data. They look at products. If you buy some devices, even phones, laptops and all that, I don't know if, or televisions, I don't know if you see sometimes some devices, you could see something with a blue or a green leaf or so. You'd see carbon certified carbon emission, something like that. Yeah. So just putting some context to the data set. So this data simply tells the colon industry type. You see construction, energy, manufacturing, mining, region. You see the regions: Africa, Asia, Europe. That's like continent. And then you have the countries, and you have the year, and then you have the emission in metric tons. CO2, carbon dioxide emission in metric tons. So let's let's say we want to pivot. You know how we do our pivot tables where we can pivot by year or by whatever, where you put, let's say, industry type in the rows, and then the values, maybe the CO2 emission in the values. Yeah, rows and values, columns. Let's see how that would look. So if you go to the transform tab, by the way, these are like scenarios, case studies. Like, there are different ways you would need to transform your data. I'm just showing. It's not that every time you would need to do this. This is just based on use case when the need arises, so you'd know that there is a whole lot you can do with Power Query. Okay. Okay, let's say we want to pivot by the year. Let's work with year. So I select this and this, or I select the year and I click on pivot colon or pivot colon. So use the name to, so it's beautiful. This is use the names in colon year to create new columns. So every unique value here in this year, it's going to use it to create new columns. Then they're asking for the value column. Remember, in pivot table, the value is the tab where we do our aggregations. So here we select what we want to be aggregating, which is CO2 emission in metric tons, and I click on OK. After I do that, you see how it's all been split into the different years. The year colon is off. The year colon is off, and it's now created a colon for each of the years. So now you can see the actual for each. So construction in Africa, Australia, and then for each of the years, right? And this is a very good example because I'm going to show you some other things. Now notice something. Look at the year columns. We have 2010, 2006, 2017, 2018, 2013. It's random and it doesn't really help for, it's not giving, right? So I'll go back to the previous step before I pivoted the colon, and I go to this year colon. Please remember, I hope I didn't need to mention, I had checked. Remember to always look at your data types first, each of the columns. Remember this icon by the left hand side tells the data type. Ensure they are intact. As a matter of fact, this year colon is not supposed to be exactly a number. Normally I would use year I'll use it for alphabet, but let's leave it, no problem. Let's leave it. Then CO2 emission is in decimal places, which is very okay. So for the year colon, it's not in order. Since I want my tables to be quite organized, I'll just go to the previous step and I'll add an additional step. Sort ascending order is from smallest to biggest, right? Yeah. So sort in ascending order. Are you sure you want to add step? Yes, insert. And it sorts it from 2020. So now let's go to the step we did afterwards. See what happens. It arranges. So you have 2020, 2021, 2022 up to, oh sorry, 2002 rather, up to 2022 in that order, which makes more sense and makes my data more presentable. So I have been able to transform this data in such a way that it is more giving and more presentable. Okay, so let's say your data came this way and you want it in rows and columns, or rather you want the year in a single column and then the data in another column. You now do the opposite of pivot, which in Power Query is on pivot columns, and you would not find this in Excel unless it has come out in the latest versions, but you don't find this in Excel where you can unpivot what you pivoted. Yeah, you can unpivot a column. So here we go, adjust to unpivot columns. I think it should give some information. Yeah, unpivot columns translates all but the current unselected columns into attributed value pairs. Okay, the English is strong, but I'm just going to show you. When you want to put columns, I guess I may not be able to. Let me just do it and then you see. The columns I want to unpivot, that is reverse to the previous format, as they were here, where you have all the years in one row and then the summation in another column. I do that. I select this year, all the years I want to be, all the columns I want unpivoted. So I've selected from year 2000 to 2022, and there are different ways to do it. I can click on pivot column here. I can right click, sorry, not on the body, on the header. If you're right clicking after selecting a file in a column or columns in Power Query, please right click on the header, not on the body, so that it doesn't go away. So you see on pivot columns here, you see, yeah. So I just on pivot columns and see what happens when I click on pivot columns. All the years come and then the aggregate values come here. So I can put year here, I can change the name to year, then CO2 emission in metric tons. We should be mindful of the units in the colon, because metric tons, if this is in metric tons, it means that it is times, metric tons should be times 1 million, or yeah, I think times 1000. Yeah, times 1000. Okay, so there we go. We have looked at how to pivot and unpivot a data set, and you can do that with any of the columns. Let's try it out with the industry type. So I select industry type and I go to pivot. Before we do that, I would want to show you another way you can unpivot columns. So I'll just exit these two unpivoted columns. So here we want to unpivot from year 2000 colon to year 2022, right? Rather than select 2000 to year 2000 to year 2022, I would select the columns that I do not want to unpivot, right? The columns I do not want to unpivot, I'll select just those items, and I can go and unpivot other columns. You see the unpivot other columns, and then it's just going to give the same values. See the trick? When you select the columns you want to unpivot, you go to unpivot columns, right? But when you select the columns you do not want to unpivot, you go to unpivot other columns, so that it picks the others. So that's the trick behind it. So let's try out pivoting now by the industry type. Maybe you want to see this arrangement by the industry type over the course of the years. I select the industry type and I go to pivot column, and then the value column is our, oops, I didn't change these names, so just so that we are not out of order. Emission should be 1S, 1M, or 2, I don't know. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. So, like we said, if we want to pivot, that is to make each of the industry types, construction, energy, manufacturing, mining, into their individual columns and see the emissions for this industry. I select the industry type, go to pivot columns and select the value column. That's what value are we pivoting, and click on OK. So here we have, you see the region, the industry has left, and then it now comes here in this order. It does the calculations for you, it splits it for you and all. So I'm just going to, okay, when you finish you go to home and you go to close and load, and it opens another sheet in that format. It opens another sheet see, in the same file. So this was our first file, our original data, and then the output. Now let's look at something together. I just want to show you how this is the original file. Let me show you how it would have been if we were doing it with our pivot table. So we are going to insert pivot table, and let me use existing sheet, so I'll just keep it here. Click on OK. If I put the industry type in columns and I put the CO2 emission, okay, yeah, so I'll just put this other one. Let's say I put the year in rows or something, or maybe everything. Collapse entire field. Rather than collapse entire field, I just change under design to show as tabular form and repeat all items, and remove subtotals. So if you look at this is like the replica of what we saw. You can take note of, if I remove grand totals by the colon, if you take note of these values here, 585.13, 194, and if we go back to our Power Query, you'll notice, oh, we don't even need to go back to the Power Query. If you come here to this table, you see the same thing. You'll notice that the same thing, 585.13, 194.25, and here we have the same values. So this is a pivot table, the pivot table. Here, we're able to do the same thing in Power Query. The beautiful thing about Power Query is the fact that you can go back, modify. If you select the table, go to query, click on edit, you can go back, modify. You can do a whole lot back end in Power Query, and you get the job done. It just helps you. So, okay, yes, Tammy, question.
Um, why does the region not match the country after the pivoting?
I beg your pardon.
And why does the region not match the country after the pivoting?
In Power Query,
Yes, like on the table.
okay, just like Africa and Australia. Australia
Yes,
is not in Africa.
exactly.
So let us investigate. Very good observation. Let us investigate the original data. Okay. So I'll go to the main data and I'll select from the region Africa, and I would see. Let me sort country. Let me see the countries here. So under the region Africa, I'm seeing Australia, Brazil, Canada, China, and all that. All under Africa. So this is an error from the data itself. Okay. So very good observation, really. Very good observation. So you see, that is why it's important to understand your data, to study your data very well. And when you observe these things, you would now want to correct this data, right? So we found out that there is a wrong mapping originally from the data that was provided to us. So it is not our fault, right? There's a wrong mapping, but the fact that it is wrongly mapped doesn't mean we'll leave it that way. So who can recommend what we can do to mitigate this issue? Anybody? Nobody. Damn, you give it a shot.
Um, I I don't know if we could use Power Query to do it.
Power query? Yeah, yeah. So it can be done with Power query. Um,
Um,
however, so it's a mapping issue between the region and the country. So normally, like, personally, I may not even. I'll just conventionally go to. How can we get things all complicated? This is what I'll take off all this. I'll take off this data. Maybe just the region and the country. Maybe open another tab and paste values. Highlight the two. Remove duplicates. Okay. Now I'm gonna sort A to Z, and maybe do region by region of filter. So Africa, under Africa, I'm seeing China, I'm seeing South Africa. I think the issue. So first of all, you need to clean the data. So thankfully, there are few countries. So Australia, or filter Australia. See, in the region, Australia is mapped into different regions, which is wrong. Which region is Australia? Anybody? I think Australia is in Australia and Oceania, right? Please confirm if there's a region like that. Anybody? Dami?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
There
yes.
is, right? Okay. So I'll just drag all this for Australia. Okay, next I'll go to Brazil. And you have Brazil everywhere. Brazil is in South America. So I'm just going to put this here. Correct. Canada is in North America. China is in Asia. Germany is in Europe. India is in Asia, right? South Africa is in Africa. And USA is in North America. So there we have it. Okay, so we successfully cleaned this data. And so what you can do, you can do this from the onset, right? So I'll just select all this, right click and clear contents for it to go, and then use my lookup. But speaking of thinking about it on a second thought, no, I wouldn't do that. Since we're working with Power Query, let us do it with Power Query. So I create a new sheet called corrected region mapping. Yeah, and I'd select this and go to data from table and range. So basically I want to take this into our query interface. So there we go. I didn't even, let me just call this CO2 emission data. And then call this region mapping. So here we have the corrected regions and the corresponding countries. So let's do a quick check. Africa has just South Africa, so we are good to go. Okay, so now we would want to replace this region with the correct one. So we're going to, just like VLOOKUP, we're going to use the country as the map. So we can take this off. Since this is wrong, I'll just remove this. To remove, you select the column you want to remove, right click and click on remove, or you go to home or transform, you'd see, okay, maybe it's in transform, home, you see remove columns, right? Remove colon, select. You could also select a column and then right click and remove other columns except the ones you selected. Yeah, but so we've removed the regional mapping now. Now we're going to use this country to map in the correct region. So here's what I'm going to do. I select the column, go to load to, what am I saying? Oh no, what have I done? Sorry. So I select the country, or do I really need to? But so okay, so this question to the house, for those who were around, who were in the last class and followed through, I have this data set here, I have this country data, and I have this other table that has region and country. How do I How do I bring this region? I want to bring this region colon to this data. Who can help me out? If after 5 seconds I don't have a response, I would call a name. Did we get the question clearly? I am Messi. Messi, can you help us?
I'm not getting your question.
Okay, I'll go again. So this is our data set, and then we have country here, all this. So we want to bring the region colon to this sheet. So we have the region colon here. We have region and we have country, and then we have this data here. But we want to move the region colon to this other sheet. How can we do that? Messi, are you there? If you're not so clear on it, you can tell me. It's fine. I'll just go on. But I'll wait for your response. Whether to go on or for you to tell me. You're muted.
You use append queries.
Append queries.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Okay. You're muted. I don't know if that's intentional. Dami, do you want to help out?
I think we use merge queries.
Mesh queries. Okay. Guide me on what to do.
So yeah, you click on the country column.
Okay.
That's the head. Then merge queries in home. In the home. Abi? Yes. Then the drop down bar below the yes. Region mapping.
Okay.
Then you click on the primary keys of each, which is country.
So here they say select
Country
a
in
table and matching column to
yeah.
create a mesh table. So country
Yeah.
here and country here.
Country.
Yes.
Yes.
So this is like the primary key.
Primary key.
Yeah. It's common to both data sets. So you use what is common to bring in the what you want to bring in. In this context, country are like, hey, look up this country in sorry? You say, hey, look up this country in this and then return the region. Once you select the two, you click on OK. And then you have this region mapping come. You have this arrow left and right. If you click on it, you uncheck others. All you want is only the region. So you click on OK. And there you have it. You have the regions here now. And you can drag it to the beginning. So you have your region. You have country, year. So if I select Australia now, let's try it, just Australia. We see that the only region is Australia and Oceania. So we have been able to correct our data set. Okay. So now, if we want to unpivot this column we had pivoted before, we changed it from construct from the what do you call it? Industry was in the colon, industry type. and we pivoted it to have their individual columns. Now, if we want them to be grouped, categorized into individual rows, individual columns, um, we can select all of them that we want to pivot unpivoted. So we just want like unpivot what we pivoted. We go to our transform and click on unpivot columns. You have them here. So I'll put this industry type. And CO2 emission in metric tons. There we go. Now, why this is important is you may encounter situations or some computations that would require you to transform your data to this format, maybe for you to be able to carry out a calculation, or for you to plot a graph, or for you to do some computation, some metrics and all that, of some calculations, prepare a chart that may need to be in this format or the other format for you to have good output or good graphs. And then there are typical examples like that. When we get into Power BI, we're going to see what I'm talking about more in this transforming your data, structuring your data to make sense out of the data. Some other things we can do with Power Query is okay, we can create a conditional colon. You know how we did our count ifs and our sum ifs and the likes. Let's put a matrix for construction. Okay, we talked about merging data last time, right? You can select both and right click on merge columns. What is the separator you want? If you want an equal to sign or a semicolon, you give it a name, merged or whatever you want to call it. Click on OK. You see you have the year and the construction, the year and the type together with the new column name. Or if you made a mistake, if you do not want an equal to sign, in the merge step you did, you can click on the settings icon and change the sign here. Maybe you wanted to put a dash and OK, it changes accordingly, so on. So you can tweak around how you want things to be. You can also group data. You want to group data, there's a function for grouping data. You select, let's say we want to group these CO2 emissions by what do you call it, the industry type. So I select the column I want to emit and I go to under transform, group by. So here is asking industry type is what you want to group. Then the new name of the column is, let's say, industry emission. Operation count row, no, we would want to sum the row, and then the column that we are summing is what? The CO2 emission metric ton. So I'll just add metric ton here and I click on OK. See what happens? It sums everything up. For each of the columns. based on the other type. Just like you're using a pivot table, it does this for you, rows and values. Yes, Dami.
I have a question. Can we group by and then make the information or the new table to be like in another table, not the same table, just like merge new or something like that. Like to make the grouping in a new table.
Yes, so you can typically what you can do is duplicate the sheet. Very good question. Like, okay, you saw what happened and you saw that you lost every other data, right?
Yeah,
Then you have
yeah.
to, yeah. So what you can just do is come to these queries, right click, and duplicate. So you can make a duplicate of it. The same steps will be replicated here. You can now come and do your grouping.
Okay.
You get?
Yeah, yes, I do.
So group by this and you have it. So you could call this industry grouping. Very good question. Yeah, then you go back to your other data and maybe you want to have different groupings for each of them. You can get that done. That works. Okay, so that is that. That is that. Now you can also transpose your data. Transposing has to do with um, transposing this transpose this table treating rows as columns and columns as rows. So basically changing the whole interface of it. I select all and I go to transpose. See what happens when you transpose. Before then, you see the headers were the rows. What am I saying? The columns. Okay, so when you transpose, the columns become the rows and the rows become the columns. Yeah, but I mean it's to be done with sense. Yeah. Um, so where is this applicable? Of course, not in every context. Well, when you need to invert it, let me take this off. Example. Oh boy, what have I done? Okay, so I'm trying to see a contextual application of transposing data, but this may even be the best fits for transposing data. So transposing the table. So it depends on the context where it's applicable, but you can do a whole lot with Power Query. Um, yeah. So I'm going to stop here for this. Here the aim was to show how to unpivot and pivot data sets, right? When you finish, you load and close. And there you have it. Sometimes you may not want so many, like just like the last sheet we worked on. Let me see if I can open Messi's work. You know how in our last task we worked, we had different sales data for different days and the product mapping and all, and we had everything collate into one sheet. Sometimes it may just be too busy to have all these sheets here, and you just want only the all sales, and these other sheets you're not deleting them, but you want them in the background. A manual way to do it is to select all the sheets you're not interested in, right click and hide them, and only the one you're interested in comes up, right? If you want to unhide, go to the cursor and go to right click on it and go to unhide. Select every sheet you want to unhide and click on OK. Now that's one way to do it, but a high level way to do it, which makes more sense to me, is to save your tables in connections only. The ones you don't want to use and the ones you want to use, you keep them visible. Let me show you how. So if you go to data and select queries and connections, I'm sure if you started hands-on Power Query, you discover that whenever you save an item, all these things come up. I'll have to use another file. This is Messi's file, so okay, let me see if I can access the one I did that day. Okay, there we go. So I have all this here, and I wouldn't want them because I have them meshed here. So why would I have these things busy? Like I said, one way you can do it is to hide the data sets. The other way, if you go to data and go to the queries and connections, it shows the list of all the tables from your Power Query. Now something you can do is to right click on each of them and go to load to. When you go to load to, you select connections only. Click on continue. So this goes away. So it's just the connection that shows connections only, and you do that for all of them that you want to take away, and you can literally delete these blank sheets. You don't need them again, and you do that for all, and then you keep the ones you want visible. It helps organize your data set. If you want to access them again, you can always right click, load to. You can load to table, pivot table, wherever you want it to, or you can edit it. You still have the data intact in Power Query, very seated comfortably, but you only output what you want to do, rather than having to do the whole connect, load to, or change connection through the tables. You can also, as well, when you are initializing it in the first place, when you want to close and load, you click on the drop down and click on load and close to, rather than load and close. By default, load and close will take it into a table format for you, but if you click on load and close to, it's going to give you different options, and whatever option you select is going to maintain that. So when you do load and close, you can select connections only. Yeah, and you can always move it to a table or wherever, whichever location, load to location you'd want to eventually. Don't worry if you didn't get that. We're going to be working with Power Query for the rest of the session, even with Power BI. So we're going to see these things in play. Okay. So I think I'm going to leave it here for this. I had mentioned we're going to look at the HRO data, how to merge the other data sets, but we're going to be using that data as one of our data major data sets for Power BI, for Power BI training.